Hey,
What's going on, Odie?
I'm good. I'm good. It's another week, another day, another video. Let's go. Let's get it.
Another topic.
Another
What's the
topic.
topic, Odie?
Yeah. So the topic for today is, accelerating growth while maintaining work-life balance, right? How do you grow? How do you accelerate your goals, or your growth while still maintaining a healthy, work-life balance? So.
That seems like an oxymoron.
Well, to a lot of people, it is, right? You see the likes of Elon Musk that sleep on the factory floor, at Tesla, just to be able to get production going. So, yeah. What do you think of the topic? Like, um what's your take on it? Yeah, before you even answer that, I think this is an opportunity to you know, thank everyone, for subscribing, and it means a lot to us, and we could get more. It would be nice if you watch these videos to also subscribe as well. The content is only going to keep getting better, and these are discussions and information that we would like the to reach the largest amount of audience, because there are a lot of software engineers who don't know these things, or would like to hear these things, and also there could also be other viewpoints as well that could help push the conversation forward. So if you really like our content, like, subscribe, comment in the description box down below. Thank you. So over to you,
No,
Scott.
no, no. I want to growth hack this. So even if this is your first, I don't know, 3 minutes even looking at this video before we start discussing the accelerating growth while maintaining work-life balance, which I don't really think is possible. Um, Subscribe for 2 hours, and after 2 hours, you can unsubscribe. I just want you to just subscribe, and then when you remember later, just unsubscribe. That's all I want. Right? I expect or I forecast for there to be maybe 100 views within the next 48 hours, and I would like to see 30 subscriptions or subscribers, and then it dropped back down to like I don't know 16.
Uh,
That's what I'm asking for. Can you make that happen, viewer? Can you?
don't mind,
I'm
Scott.
trying to.
Just subscribe, okay? It's free. You're not paying for it. I mean, and it helps us a lot, and that's part of the reason why he's insisting on it. But all right, let's jump right into it.
Agenda. Okay.
Yeah.
I don't think it's possible. Accelerating growth while maintaining work-life balance, it's it's a conflict, right?
Hmm.
In order to accelerate, I believe by the laws of physics, you have to put forth more energy.
Hmm.
If you put forth more energy, then that's not energy that is being saved. Hence, accelerating growth while maintaining work life balance is not only counterintuitive, it is physically, by the laws of physics, not doable. I don't know about the laws of thermodynamics. Maybe you do, but I feel like it relates to that.
So I vehemently, absolutely disagree. So here's the thing. Even in, even in, yes, you're right in the sense that you need more energy, but, and this is a very huge but, the situation is always more complicated than that, right? You can leverage energy, right? There's energy around, right? You can harvest unused energy or untapped energy, right? You hear about these things when I can't remember, because this goes way back when I was taught, but things like leverage, even the word leverage in and of itself, right? It's called machines. Leverage is where you use a little amount of force to generate a huge amount of potential, right? And this is something that I'm at the stage of my career where I'm starting to learn, even as a senior developer, is there are systems you can put in place. There are mechanisms you can design that can, they call it,
Force multipliers.
thank you very much, force multipliers that can multiply your impact, right? Granted, you can't have energy, you can't create energy or destroy energy, but there are ways, there are techniques you can use to leverage it. There's also a second principle at play, the principle of compounding impact or compounding interest, right? If you look at the distribution of stars, the top 3% of stars, right, account for, like, the majority of the mass. The top 3%, the top 10% of people in America amount for most of the wealth in America, right? The top cities in America account for the largest amount of population. Yes. Yes.
No,
Okay.
the top 3% of stars
The
that
top
are visible to the
10%.
naked eye.
The,
Oh, okay. I thought you were saying if you look at the stars, the top 3% of the stars that you see are responsible for the overwhelming majority of.
No, 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 no. I'm talking about the mass, the just sheer mass, right? It's
Okay.
it's it's a law of, I can't remember the name it's called, but it's this idea that the bigger you are, the easier it is to get bigger. The smaller you are, the easier it is to be small. So if you're, for
Hmm.
example, you're earning like $1,000 and you are barely making it, the chances that you will go down to zero and that the system will mess you up is almost 100,000,
Yeah,
right?
it's a
But
downward spiral versus a snowball effect.
exactly, exactly. So always remember that, right? That there are situations, there are things that can be done that can compound your impact. A good example, I can give you a good example. The creator of Scala once posted, I can't remember his name off the top of my head. I don't want to bother.
It's something Odersky, or
Yes,
I can't
yes.
remember the first. Martin Odersky.
It wasn't Martin Ode. I think he's not the creator, but he's one of the people that propagates the Scala language. I'll look for his name, but he asked a question. He said,
Martin Odersky. That's the
yeah, yeah,
author of it.
that's the author of Scala.
Okay.
I'm trying to remember who the other guy is, but yeah,
All right.
I can't find it. But he tweeted something. He said, and it was a very important tweet. He said something around the fact that he said, if you were to build $1 billion company and you could only hire exactly 10 engineers, and just 10 engineers, regardless of skill level, what language or what tools would you use? And I of course commented, and I was like, F sharp is what you would use, because F sharp is easy to read. It's efficient, not easy. It's efficient to read, it's efficient to write, it's efficient to refactor. Refactoring is just indenting. Oh, I want this to be a method. Copy, indent. You already have a new method, right? It's easy to read because the F sharp doesn't really. F sharp is very, very condensed in the amount of information. It goes straight to the heart of what you're trying to do.
Syntax or information dense
It's
syntax.
exactly, it's information dense, and it's also easy to refactor because you have very strong compilers that check everything and make sure that everything is strongly typed, and all the other things with it. Now,
Okay.
so just the choice of using F sharp alone, right, gives you a significant force multiplier versus if you were using, say, assembly or C or C++. You get what I mean? Um,
Towards an application.
yeah,
Sure.
yeah, towards building an application. So that's the point I'm trying to get at, is whether it's writing code, whether it's getting other people to write code, whether it's outsourcing, whether it's finding hacks. There are always ways of improving your impact, right? Accelerating your growth. Remember the topic, without necessarily sacrificing the amount of time that you have to do other things and the time you have to spend. Because truth of the matter is that time is our most valuable resource, and any time that passes, we don't get back. So it may seem like some goals may seem worthy in the moment because it's like, oh, I'm building this startup, I'm building my career at this high tech company, and that should be my number one primary concern. But the truth of the matter is that we get to live up to 80, and the choices we are making now is going to shape how that future will look like. Like my dad always says, any future that's not somehow connected to today does not exist. So any aspect of your life that you are not investing in right now is not going to magically become good later, right? So whether it's your family or your relationships or your friendships or your other interests, right? Those things are very important. So that balance, it's difficult to do, but it's absolutely possible. And having the mindset that is absolutely possible is one of the key resources you need to be able to find such solutions. So that's my take on it.
Yeah, so I disagree.
Okay.
Uh, I think I understand the concept of force multipliers,
Mm,
but in reality and commercially, force multipliers are not accessible by everybody. It's over time it may be, but then that becomes a lower productive way or method of doing something, and there's another force multiplier, right? So
mm,
there's an evolution to this.
okay.
Um, the force multi the force multiplier maybe a couple 100,000 years ago was a stone or two stones, right? Versus using a hand,
Mm,
right? And so you kill an animal or you kill your enemy, and that was the force multiplier. Who had the stone? Who didn't?
mm,
Then the stone became primitive. It was a spear that was a force multiplier, and you didn't have to be within an arm's reach to bash, an animal's head in or another human being. You can throw it, right? And if it's within like maybe 15 feet, maybe it'll work, and it was a lot better than a stone. But then the spear became uh, no longer a force multiplier, maybe during I don't know, first century or whatever, right? You see where I'm going with this, because then
yeah,
it
I can.
became I don't know, a blow dart or whatever.
Hmm.
So the point is that I'm trying to say is each of these require, I think, incredible uh, research and commitment to produce, and
Mm,
then it's just not accessible for everybody. It's not a big bang release where da-da, and then everybody says thanks, and everybody's magically 10x whatever they're putting their effort into.
mm,
It's more like grind, grind, grind in the lab. Oh, I think I'm on to something. Grind, grind, grind. Hence, fusion is an example of this.
okay.
And then we have a public announcement. We have created blah blah blah, but it's still probably going to take another 10 years to commercialize. But it's been peer reviewed, it's been tested repeatedly in labs by different parties, and we think we understand the groundwork for what we need to develop. But it's not going to be commercialized probably for a score of
Mm,
years, right? Now, I think I pounded into the ground that a force multiplier is relative, and it's not necessarily accessible to to the masses, only to the privileged. The other part, I think you brought up a good point when you said leverage. But when you said leverage, I was thinking of another word,
mm,
integrate. So there's accelerating growth while maintaining work life balance. And then in my mind, I put a strike through accelerating, and I said integrating growth while maintaining work life balance.
mm,
And this is something that I do. I'm a practitioner of this. What I do, uh, probably 5 mornings out of the week, is I will put on my earbuds, and I will plan for my 2 to 3 mile run in the morning or my 15-mile bike ride in the morning, and I will listen to something educational most of the time, unless I really need to get it in, and then I'm bumping some like Rick Ross or something. But I'm going to go on YouTube and I'm going to either listen to information on startups or information on investing or information on Azure functions or whatever technology, and that's going to keep me. I don't know. That's going to subconsciously feed my mind as I'm exerting or burning calories, trying to maintain a lifestyle of what I would like to be,
Mm.
right? That I may not necessarily be now. I'll pause in case you want to jump in, or I can keep
No,
on
no, no.
going.
Keep going. Keep going.
Okay, so when you integrate your growth or your ambitions of growth into your lifestyle, let alone your work life balance, what I have observed is I believe his name is uh, Derek Harding, maybe Dan Harding. I think it's Derek Harding's book, The Compound Effect, which you referenced,
Mhm.
in which his example in the beginning of his book. Oh yeah, I listen to podcasts too while I'm working out
Mm.
and driving. He gave an example of three different people. One person he eats junk food like pizzas and Twinkies, and just consistently. Another person, they don't really eat junk food, but they also don't really work out. And then the other person eats healthily, if that's a word,
Mm.
and uh, and also maintains a workout regimen. And so, in the three examples that he provided, I'm trying not to butcher it. The book is called The Compound Effect. Um, there's very negligible differences for the first 3 weeks.
Yes.
However, after 3 months, there's those negligible differences begin to increase. After 3 years, there's significant impacts
Mm.
to the diets and to the routines of these three people, right? The person that eats Twinkies and has a bad diet and rarely works out, well, now he has, what was it called, hypertension maybe,
Mhm.
and if he doesn't check that, it's going to evolve or devolve into diabetes, right? Which means he has to put forth more effort, in which his mind isn't condition for that type of lifestyle that he now needs to
Mm.
practice and endure if he wants to try to get back into a healthy state. Or else, not only is his condition going to deteriorate, but now the money that he's been cultivating or making or earning now is going to be going towards paying his medical expenses,
Mm.
right? There's an ecosystem to this too. Now that was the first person. The other person, he he ate fairly healthy, but he didn't necessarily exercise. So no, he doesn't necessarily have hypertension, but he he doesn't have like the greatest physique either. He's average.
Okay. Mhm.
And then the other person, well, this other person, they work out every other day for at least half an hour and they maintain a good diet. They rarely splurge on junk food. They rarely have more than 3 days without some type of exercise for more than 15 minutes.
Mm.
And this person, after 36 months, has a flat stomach, um, attracts not just women, but also is more attractive when it comes to presentation.
Mm.
And he tends to have a higher success rate of presenting ideas and and influencing others,
Mm.
just because of his presentation, right? So I'm sure that I butchered what the book was communicating, but
Yeah.
you get the idea.
Yeah.
And to go back, this wasn't necessarily about accelerating growth, but it was more of how do you integrate in a positive way. And I kind of gave an example of me
Mm,
learning as I'm listening, and while I'm doing my workout regimen or driving. So
yeah. So, I don't know because I think I have the answer to the question. I don't know if I should just go straight into it, but here's what I think the answer is. Okay. Um, it all comes down to something called micro habits. Okay. And the reason why micro habits are important are because of what you said in terms of, compounding growth and all of that stuff, where you have different people that have different habits, and given enough time, they are wildly different. And the reason for this is multi varied, but let me just, narrow it down, because what tends to happen is when you see someone who is in shape, right? They have good diets, they exercise. That good shape comes with confidence, right? That confidence now forms a feedback loop, because when the person becomes a little bit more confident, they now realize that, oh wow, you know, this exercise is helping me, this exercise is doing really, really well. And all of a sudden, the person starts spending more time in the gym, and that spending more time in the gym yields bigger results, and so on and so forth. Um, People ask me all the time, oh, I want to become a software engineer. What do I need to become a software engineer? It really boils down to exactly that, right? Micro habits. The likes of you or I, right? At this level of our career, we didn't get here because we were motivated by money or anything like that. It was as a result of multiple micro habits in the way we do things, right? So it's something that, okay, every day, for example, you know I read up on different technologies, go on YouTube, learn about different things, watch a few tutorials, right? Build a particular project, and then from building that project, so if I want to learn a new language now, the same thing applies. From building that project, you level up subconsciously, because now you are no longer where you were before. Before, you had never seen, F sharp code or whatever the case may be. But by doing a project badly, no matter how little it is, right? All of a sudden you figured something out. You are slightly in a
you
slightly better position.
unlocked an achievement like a video game. That's the
Eh,
metaphor that I use.
Exactly. You've unlocked an achievement. Now, what tends to happen is that that achievement comes with a dopamine hit of its own. You're like, wow, I did this. This is cool, right? And now you have more motivation to learn more. And that more motivation to learn more brings even larger results, because when you apply the extra knowledge you got even more success. So it tends to feed into each other, into itself, right? And the crazy part is that people like to think that success is a linear path. Oh, I started working on this project, and I kept getting successful up to the point that I'm at. It's not so, right? If you're talking about compounding, you're looking at an inverse log curve, right? Something like this. So
Hockey
it
stick.
hockey stick, exactly. So initially you're not going to see any change whatsoever, but like someone rightly said, he said that uh, um um even slowing down, I think I'm mixing my train of thought now, but the point is there is going to be a very large period where your effort isn't yielding any success, but as once you cross a particular threshold, then those feedback loops kick in and they start to really accelerate. Remember what we said earlier, or start to integrate, success in on the things we do. But a second aspect of micro habits that's super important as well is that it's also a win if you are able to slow down descent, right? So say for example, we pick the previous example you just mentioned of somebody that doesn't eat healthy, just eats junk and fast food, doesn't do exercise, just you know and the person keeps adding weight. Now, if midway the person realizes that, oh, I need to start taking my health I need to start taking my health seriously. I need to pay attention. I need to start looking at what I eat, etc., etc. What's going to happen is that for the first, I don't know, 6 months, maybe 6 months is too much, but let's say for the first 3 weeks, the person will see zero progress. In fact, the person might even see negative progress, in the sense that while they are exercising and on the diet, they are actually increasing in weight, right? And it's at that point that most people become discouraged because it's like I'm putting it all this effort and it's as if nothing is going on. But the important thing to remember is that you were already accelerating anyway, right? So the fact that you are slowing down is progress in and of itself. So the moment you decide, let's say you are driving in the wrong direction, and you realize, and you are driving at 100 km per hour, and all of a sudden you realize that, oh, I'm in the wrong direction, I need to go back. The moment you match the brake is not the moment you start making progress towards your original goal, right? The mechanisms in your life have to slow down first, and that slowdown is still forward motion. You get what I mean? So it's still
Yeah,
forward motion in the wrong direction, but it has to slow down before you now start picking up. So that's something that is very, very important to remember, is that, oh, I'm struggling with a particular thing, I don't know, whatever, addiction, whatever. And even though I have decided to change my ways, I notice that I still fall prey to it every so often. So for example, if you want to stop drinking coffee, I just want to use something benign, right? Because you've been drinking coffee for a very, very long time, right? You may successfully stop drinking coffee for, like, I don't know, a week, and relapse into drinking one cup of coffee here or there, and people see that as a failure. But no, it's not. That's not how to think about it, right? A better way to think about it is, had you done nothing, you would be in a worse place than you are now. You get what I mean? So the fact that you're in a worse place than you know the fact that you're not in a worse place is a win in and of itself. And having that mindset gives you the opportunity for those feedback mechanisms, those compounding interests, to to improve the what do they call it, to improve the gains you are going to get in future. Does that make sense?
yeah, I think so. It's not really growth. It's more of decelerating
Yeah.
so that you can go into a positive direction,
Mhm.
right? Which
Mhm.
is what essentially putting the brakes on is. It's accelerating in the reverse direction,
True.
right? Until you come
True.
to a, a stop, and then you
Then you
start picking up speed.
exactly.
I learned that in physics, but
Exactly. Yeah.
so people aren't willing to put in the time.
Yeah. So, but
Uh,
maybe a better question we should ask is, let's make it a little bit more pointed. So maybe you should come up with an example of, of how this conflict, tends to show up in your life.
sure, you're held accountable for putting in your 8 to 9 hours a day, delivering someone else's dream, someone else's vision.
Mhm.
If you're lucky enough to have people that love you, then they require attention. All right, I have it sometimes, and those are two of the major factors: is people that rely on you
Mhm.
for their quality of life,
Mhm.
and this may, I'm not going to let this go into a rabbit hole, but if you demonstrate that, with emphasis on demonstrate, that you are achieving mastery at leading yourself,
Mm.
you're you're going to attract people that they're going to follow,
Mm.
right? It may it may not be many people, but you're going to attract followers only because you've demonstrated how to lead yourself. Anyways, I say all this because I really just butchered the train of thought. Yeah, I butchered the train of thought. I'm sorry, Odie.
Yeah, yeah, no, no, no.
It was related to relationships.
Okay. Yeah, yeah. Like, okay, so another example I can give is, in my early days, trying to become a software engineer and all of that stuff, right? I spent a good deal of time, um, just focused on work alone, right? Just pouring my heart and soul into learning, um, you know, different platforms, how to build software, how to do continuous integration, delivery. Essentially, all the knowledge I have now, right? It came from a period of my life when, it was nothing but work. I didn't think of anything. I did not see anyone. I wasn't even this thing. And I remember in 2016, oh, it was in 2016 or so, on New Year's Day, I was at home coding, you know, while people were shouting Happy New Year or whatever the case may be, right? I just didn't care. Um, but I remember something my dad told me, and I think that has kind of stuck with me, which is that when you look back at your life, right, at your old age, you aren't just going to see, you're going to evaluate your life on all the dimensions, not just the dimensions you are successful at. And even if you scored A in your work dimension, the other aspects of your life are equally as important, right? And you have to start putting in the effort now to build that aspect of your life. Like, how is your health? How are you taking care of yourself? What relationships do you have? What's your relationship with your family? When do you plan to get married? When do you plan to have children? Right? These are other aspects that, as a young man, they aren't important to you. But if you look at your life in its entirety, right? As an 80-year-old man, for example, your work, the job you did, is going to take a much less score, right? In the overall score you give how well you lived your life. Not to mention the second aspect too is that sometimes you the moments you remember are the moments when you did things out of the norm, right? Where you went out on you did something that broke up the routine somehow. And those are the stories you tell, those are the memories you keep. So from that perspective, so I'm just making the case now that as software engineers there is the temptation to be just totally hyper focused on accelerating your growth in the company where you work, or working on your side project to try and become the next best startup. That temptation is there. But when but in the grand scheme of things, right, that's not all there is to life. And always remembering that, and trying to force some kind of balance is going to pay off in the long run. That's my take on the
So,
whole
so
thing.
I'm going to throw a monkey wrench in here.
Okay.
All right.
Mhm.
Um, Let me try to figure out how to frame this. There, I think there are benefits to working like a Hebrew slave. When you're dealing with mental illness
Mm,
and you don't have positive thoughts, instead you have intrusive thoughts.
mm,
Sometimes the only thing to keep you not thinking dark thoughts
mm,
is to immerse yourself in something that is more productive, right? Like when your brain is not acting right and like it's involuntary,
mm,
sometimes like it's the keyboard or it's that project
mm.
that will focus your mind on something productive so that you don't dwell on something that could be hurtful.
True.
um, I found myself there,
Mm,
right? So that's a counter argument. um, and maybe it's an extreme example, but there's so many people that have experienced that I think it is an outlet.
mm,
It's a sacrifice, I think.
mm.
Everything's relative, right? So
Yeah, yeah. Like, so, there's this saying, an idle mind is the devil's workshop, right? Um, so you don't want your mind to be idle, but at the same time, you don't want to try to use work as a crutch or a substitute for actually challenging real real issues or real
Out of sight, out
conversation.
of mind.
Yeah, yeah. So you want to still address those things because what tends to, once something that I have known, I don't know how much, psychological uh, uh not, psychological theory is behind what I'm about to say, but I strongly believe it is that whenever you suppress emotions, they don't go away. When I say suppress them, whenever you distract your brain towards certain emotions, right? They don't go away. They just wait for you until you you are there is a moment when maybe for some reason you have a downtime or something like that, and they will come back. So more often than not, if you don't quote unquote face your demons, right? Whether through therapy or whether through, talking to someone or something like that, or um trying to address your fears or address your issues, it's not going to it's a short-term solution for a long-term problem, right? Um and one thing that has also worked for me as well is I noticed that the moment I face my problems head on, sometimes the outcome of that is even greater, even a deeper sense of understanding of who I am, right? And that deeper sense of understanding is even better than the base case of not facing your fears, right? So, for example, my fear of losing my job was one of the critical fears that led me down the road of, oh, I need to learn all the C sharp, I need to be the best at my job, and blah blah blah. Was because I
It's
was
the
at,
same here. My fear of being homeless
yeah.
accelerated where I'm at today.
Yeah, yeah, like that fear was, was all I could think about, and so on and so forth. But one thing I learned was the moment I was able to confront that fear, like, so what if you get laid off? How are you going to survive? Can you think of ways outside of the box? That's what led me down the road of writing blog posts. That's what led me down the road of, creating YouTube content. That's what led me down the road of, um, um, applying for jobs outside of my country at the time, which was in Nigeria. Um, and look at where I am today, right? So almost every stepping stone I got was because I faced the real demons at the time, right? The real demons that I had, and I was able to overcome them. But the means of overcoming them is almost like in video games, right? The the when you meet a boss that is so difficult that you can't make progress, that you have to understand that that boss is difficult because your mindset has not surpassed your understanding hasn't surpassed the level of that boss. So because of it, that boss will constantly be a stumbling block. But someone else who has probably finished the game will play the exact same boss, and it will be easy for that person. You know, that tells you that it's not the boss that is the issue. It's your mindset towards that particular challenge that is the issue. Does that make sense? So I always ask myself, right, when something really bothers me, I always ask myself, if someone else was in my exact shoes, is it possible for somebody else to get out of this tricky situation? If so, how? What do I need to become that person, right? And every time that mental switch flips in my mind, there's almost like an instant level up immediately, right? So yeah, that's something that I would ask you to consider as well, is look inward and figure out, okay, if someone else was in my exact same situation, is it possible that they would be able to uh, uh, surpass the current challenges I'm facing? And if the answer is yes, the question is, what's the difference between you and that person? What does that
Yeah,
person have that you don't have?
yeah. I ego trip, so I have because of low self esteem, I always
Mm,
try to hold myself higher than everybody else. Um,
mm,
I think something that's common in this discussion, even if it hasn't yet been spoken, is integrate. Right?
mhm.
You integrate what you need, what you want to be, into what you're already doing,
Correct.
and integrate. And then the other word is being resourceful.
Mm,
Right? And this is something that I probably have twice a week conversations with on trying to help people that I care about. Is they're so quick to say, I can't, I am
mm,
too this, I am too that,
mm,
busy, tired, I don't have time, right?
mm,
And a common denominator, for lack of a better term or phrase, is no, you can do it. You're not thinking about how you can do it.
mm,
You need to be resourceful. Don't think about the reasons why. Think about how.
mm.
And I think maybe it's ever since like the invention of fire. I don't know what it is, but I sincerely believe that human beings once used to think how
Mm,
before we had dominion over this earth. Before we had refrigerators, before we had black powder, I'm confident that people didn't have a choice but to figure out how they can eat,
yeah.
how they can get shelter. And now we've evolved or devolved into we expect it to be delivered. And if it's not mainstream, if it's not a mainstream practice,
Mm,
then we are so quick to say you can't accelerate growth into a healthy lifestyle.
mm,
And you create justifications for why
mm,
instead of saying how, right? And I gave a talk about this at Tampa Code Camp when I was talking about software development and writing business logic.
mm,
It's one thing to declare if or when
mm,
syntax. It's another thing to rely on uh, precise types
mm,
and you enforce what needs to be done versus asking when
mm.
are the conditions necessary. Completely different paradigm shift. I'll pause, but I think again to conclude, those are the two biggest terms.
Mm,
It's integrate whatever you need into your lifestyle.
mhm,
Figure out how to integrate it. Right. If you have a kid and you still are trying to maintain a daily regimen of cardio and physical training or weight training,
mhm,
well, maybe you bring that kid with you
mhm.
to the yard to do your pull-ups, to do your dips, right?
Yeah.
I saw a woman a month and a half ago. I was at. I just happened to come across a marathon,
Mm,
and I was an observer. Very first time ever. I didn't think this was possible. I never conceived that someone would integrate a child into them running a marathon. She was running a marathon with a stroller.
oh wow.
Was that not a lesson to me about other things in life? She
Mm,
integrated her objective of running a marathon
mm,
and having a kid that needed to be supervised
mm.
into I'll supervise the kid as I'm running the marathon. Here's a stroller that has three wheels.
You know something? I think this is a classic example of how here in the West, right? People have, because of the background of the backdrop of your society, right? There are mindsets that are formed, and then there are mindsets that are formed to break the original programming, right? The reason I say this is that what she did is a roundabout way of something that Africans have done for thousands of years, right? I don't know if you've seen a picture of it where a woman will carry a baby on her back and tie a wrapper. Have you seen that picture before?
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, if you are where I'm from, like if you come to Nigeria, you see them everywhere. Such women will have the child on their back, will be selling whatever they want to sell, will be doing what do they call it? Will be sewing clothes, doing stuff, right? Even me myself, right? Even when my mom, okay, so my mom had me, and my mom was a teacher, but my auntie, my mom's younger sister, used to take care of me, and she used to carry me on her back just like that and do everything. She would go out, she would write her papers and stuff like that while I was on her back, right? So it goes back to this integrating thing, right? I don't see why she used the stroller. She should have just carried her baby on her back and ran the marathon.
For 22 miles or
Yeah,
26 miles,
yeah,
26.2 miles.
yes. Now, who am I to say all these things? But the reason I say it is that there are women in Africa today, right, that do just the exact same thing, right?
That will carry a 20-pound kid for 26.2 miles.
Yes. The worst part
I'm not
is
sure if it's
the
miles
worst.
or kilometers. Which one's 26.2?
It's a
I gotta look
kilometer.
it up.
Yeah, kilometer is smaller than miles. So you know what's even worse is that in Africa, such women are not doing it to stay healthy or stay in shape or anything stupid like that.
Oh, right.
Yeah, such women are doing it because they need water to drink, they need firewood for their family, so they walk miles with a baby on their back to go and cut firewood, put that firewood on their head, and walk miles back. You get what I'm saying? Like, there is no you don't get it, right? Because when I say
No, I
certain
mean, I didn't get it until I saw the woman running a marathon with a stroller.
so but
I was blown away. And she wasn't African. She was a blonde haired, blue eyed white woman. And I'm like, whoa, like,
yeah,
okay.
yeah, but the point I'm getting at is that when survival is your topmost priority, like where I'm from anyway, right? You have no other option but to integrate. So for example,
It's involuntary, right?
yes, so for example, in Africa, we don't have the luxury of just getting things off the supermarket, or because somebody said that most people in North America think that eggs are manufactured in the convenience stores because that's where they get their eggs. So it doesn't occur to them that, oh, this egg was taken from a chicken. It was hatched, taken from a chicken, cleaned up, and put inside a pack and sent, right? They just think that, oh, eggs is something I just go and pick up on the shelf. The point I'm getting at is that, in Africa, everything has to be integrated. So the eggs you eat is going to come from the chickens in your poultry. And those chickens in your poultry are going to feed off the scraps that you left over. So it's almost like a revolving door of ecosystem where nothing gets to be wasted, right? You have goats that their job is to eat the trash, what we call organic compost that we throw away here, right? That is what gets fed to the goats, right? Or the chickens or whatever the case may be. And then over time, those goats multiply, your chickens multiply, same thing, and then you now have food to eat. So it, you cannot you cannot afford to be wasteful, quote unquote, the way we are here, in North America and all of that stuff. But yeah, it's a good strategy to follow. How to integrate your life. Another example is I told you. Do you know how I learned JavaScript? Oh, I didn't
No.
tell you. Okay, so how I learned JavaScript. I didn't have a system. I didn't have a PC. I didn't have a laptop. I had to pay money to go to a cyber cafe. That's what we used to call them, right? To go and practice JavaScript and C sharp and blah blah blah. But I had like a feature phone, right? Not a smartphone. All those Nokia feature phones. And the Nokia feature phone had the ability to, it wasn't touch screen. It was a color screen. It had the ability to view PDFs. and it also had the ability to play MP3s. And I had to go online and look for MP3s and download PDFs and MP3s of video tutorials on JavaScript and download PDFs with showing code samples and all of that stuff. And then I would now use that opportunity whenever I had chance to pay money, go to a cyber cafe and practice the things that I was learning. Same thing with C Sharp. I read this C Sharp book, C Sharp in a nutshell. I read it because I used to enter like a 2 hour commute, right? So every morning I would wake up at 5 o'clock. I would wake up at five. No, I would wake up at no, I would wake up at 4 a.m. Get to the bus stop at 5 because if you get to the bus stop at 6, you're screwed. I get to the bus stop at 5 a.m. in the morning, and then I would commute for 2 hours to get to office at 7. But what I did was to use that opportunity.
I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it.
Oh,
You
come on.
burn like you burn what 4 or 5 hours. I can't do the
Easy,
math.
easy. For 5 hours, easy. Because
Just
I
commuting.
just commuting. Cause so I will close at 5 p.m. By the time I get to the bus stop, whatever, let's say 5:30, and then enter another 2 hour commute. So from 5:30 to 7:30, I will get home at night to wake up 4 a.m. the next
You
day
live
again.
to work.
Exactly, exactly. But the point was, I still had to find a way because I was so passionate about, learning software, learning programming. I still needed to look for ways of integrating, video tutorials and stuff like that, so that I could watch it while I'm on commute and stuff like that. So anyway, point is that
Integration.
yeah, integration and also micro habits, super important, right? Your micro habits go a long way, in affecting how your long-term prospects will look like, in terms
Okay,
of
let's
growth.
wrap this up.
Yeah. All right. So, what's the conclusion? Want to give it a shot?
Well, completion is we've concluded, or I think we've concluded, that in order to accelerate growth while maintaining work life balance,
Hmm.
there's pillars to this.
Yep.
One of which is probably the pillar is integration,
Mm,
integrating whatever you need to grow at with your lifestyle,
mm.
right? You got to like sew that into the fabric of everyday life, right?
Yes.
The other part is seek out a force multiplier, which may not be easy,
Hmm.
right? Because I gave a dissertation on force multipliers, usually are for the people that have access to it,
Mm.
or that have privilege access to it. And then the other part was so integrate force multipliers, and then you said micro habits. I'm not sure what the difference is between micro habits or atomic habits, if they're synonyms
Yeah,
of one
they're
another.
synonyms. It's the same thing. It's the same thing, right? So,
Yes.
so what you do on a day-to-day basis, right? That is really your life, right? It's not the once in a year vacation that you go for that's your life. It's I wake up in the morning, I brush my teeth, I get a cup of coffee, I sit down, I do this, I do that, I call this person, I do whatever,
Yeah.
that
So
yeah.
let me touch on that. So the way I've demonstrated micro habits,
Mm,
my daily, really my morning routine is you know how like older people would read the morning paper.
mm-hmm,
You know what I used to do, especially when learning F sharp. Every morning, I would go through the Stack Overflow questions and answers.
mm,
Every morning, older people do like crossword puzzles or Sudoku.
mm.
I do F sharp on Stack Overflow, and
Interesting.
that's how I was onboarding. The other part is I would have a quota of publishing a blog post like once a week.
Mm,
It didn't matter if it was quality blog posts. I just had to document what I resolved that I was struggling with, kind of what you
mm.
discussed earlier.
Yeah.
I had to document my journey,
Mm,
right, somewhere, and then I would get I hover like around 10,000 points of Stack Overflow.
mm.
half of those points are me asking questions. More than half of those points are me asking questions
Hmm,
between Windows Presentation Foundation, Xamarin,
hmm,
and F Sharp.
hmm.
I'm not sure if I'm the only person that has accrued that many points from just asking questions,
Yeah.
but I have, right? So all these are like um, morning rituals or daily rituals, regiments,
Hmm,
affiliated or associated with atomic habits.
hmm. Yeah, that's right. One last gem that I would like to drop as well is, you mentioned something earlier about uh, working with people, and they are convincing themselves that, oh, I can't do this, I'm too busy, I'm too this, I'm too that. You remember when you said that, right?
Mm-hmm.
I tend to take it a step further. And this is a mental trick that I want us to end this podcast on, because it's something to really think about. Is I psych myself to become the person I want to be, right?
I do that.
Yeah. So I want to become.
That's how I became an architect. That's how I became a WPF developer. Occasionally, when I get lucky on the weekends, I fake who I want to be or the type of person that would get that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
totally.
So in fact, the way I do it is I psych myself into thinking that I'm an expert in something I know very little about, right? So before I became this F sharp expert that I am now, right? I've done a lot of F sharp. Um, I used to struggle with F sharp. I remember vividly. And one of the things I psyched myself into thinking is, I like this language, this is easy for me. This is easy for me. I'm good at this. I'm good at this. This is easy for me. I had to keep psyching myself like that, because that mentality is what makes the effort easier, right? Having that mentality means that your micro habits, remember micro habits we talked about, is going to get easier, right? So even if
Yeah, it
I'm
sounds like an affirmation, right?
exactly. So even
Yeah,
if
I'm
I'm
not
an
sure if affirmations work for me.
let's say I was, obese and I wanted to lose weight or something like that. If I mentally tell myself that, oh, I'm a fitness guru, I'm good at fitness, I can lose this weight, this is easy for me, this I enjoy, this is an activity I enjoy, right? Even though in that moment it's going to suck, right? If I psych myself that, oh, you are enjoying this, you are enjoying this, eventually it becomes my reality. I can give you an example, right? When I first joined Amazon, I was excited, hey, Amazon, hey. And then I got to witness the absolute complexity of the job, right? It was intimidating. But I psyched myself. I said, I'm good at this. I'm good at this. This is easy. This is easy. This is easy work. You know, I'm smart enough to overcome this. This is not difficult, right? And what started happening was I was more motivated to put in the effort. And even though that effort was not yielding any result, that psyching that I psyched myself meant that I kept putting the effort until the effort started actually generating uh, um actually started generating what's the word, results, right? Almost it's starting to become true. Those things that I affirmed, that I affirmed that, oh, this is easy, this, you got this, this is not difficult, you can do this, this is, uh,
Yeah,
um,
I do something. So the affirmations part, I do that when I'm struggling with running.
mm,
Like when after after like maybe 2 miles or 3 or 4 miles, because I'm a big dude, right? I'm not
yeah,
designed to run.
yeah,
Um, like my mind says, Scott, you're good, man. Just chill. Like you've done enough. I'm like, oh man, I'm Scott Nimrod. I got this. I'm
mm,
made for this. That marker right there, that tower, that structure. I got this. And then what I do is, even though my eyes are open,
mm,
I I my visuals fade, and I think about. I literally put myself into a dream state of approaching the finish line, and I
Mm,
take myself, I take my soul back to when I ran the half marathon in Mexico City, and
mm,
the emotions and the feelings that I was experiencing when I
mm,
was a quarter mile or even less from the finish line, and all the people clapping and all the people rooting for me to
mm,
get there, right? And what
mm,
happens? I start accelerating, right?
mm,
And so when I'm doing cardio and it's very, very hard,
mm,
I mean, I treat it like life. It's like you got to just keep going and going, one foot after another, one brick after another, until you cross that finish line. There's people rooting for you, man.
mm,
Like, and then the other part, so that's cardio. But when it comes to like mentally, like administrative or programming, it's very different,
mm,
right? And you've probably seen this, or you probably heard me utter this before. When I was learning F sharp, I already decided. I had already made a declaration. You could probably search for it somewhere 5 years ago on Google.
mm,
My objective was to be the technical authority in the state of Florida
mm,
for F sharp. Whenever I'm trying to learn something, and I'm remember I have this like low self esteem, elitist mentality to compensate for.
mhm,
Whenever I want to learn something that's challenging, and I know that it's not necessarily mainstream, my first objective is to be the technical authority in whatever street that I currently live on,
mm,
the technical authority in the city of Miami,
mm,
and I keep growing it, the technical authority in the state of Florida, the technical authority in Southeast United States of America or continental North America. The way I frame it, I can be the technical authority in my bedroom on my laptop,
mm.
right? But I keep expanding the region that I'm a the technical authority and whatever I want to develop my can't say the word
Competence.
competency in.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So that's a strategy that I use, and it works. It works for me
Hmm.
because it feeds into my ego that I'm the authority, even though it's within a very relatively like
Niche. Yeah.
constrained region
Mm.
that
Wow.
that I'm the authority of.
Wow.
So
That's very powerful, and I imagine that, you know, each individual is going to have their own specific flavor of what you just said, right? For me, like I said earlier, for me, it's all about convincing myself that I am good at something that I'm not, right? And then the effort comes easily. And then that effort is what gets to compound and and now become actual reality. But up until that point, it's usually very, very difficult. And I think it's one of the things that I know we've gone a little bit overboard, but I will say this. It's one of the things that I learned from playing video games, right? Playing very difficult video games is the idea that um, challenges in life are just that, challenges. They are not immoral. They are neither good nor bad. But how you respond to those challenges is what separates the people who will be successful or the people who will be held back permanently, right? It's how do you respond to that adversity, and understanding that the solution to adversity is your response to it, not the adversity in and of itself. That liberating you, right? Because you realize that, oh, I just need to try multiple things and figure out what is going to work. And, you know, I am going to get over this hump. I'm going to get over this difficulty. So, yeah. Yes,
that's a wrap.
that's a
Call to
wrap, man.
action. Subscribe to our it's really helpful. And
Yeah.
Odie disagrees about what I'm trying to hack, but
Mm.
subscribe for 2 hours and then
Okay.
you can unsubscribe.
Okay. Yeah, I hope you found at least some useful gems or information from this content, and if you did, give it a thumbs up, like, subscribe, comment, let us know. Like, feedback is really important, so that
Yeah, I
would be
think
awesome.
we were pretty vulnerable, man. We shared some dark
Yeah.
sides of us. So
Yeah,
I'm
true.
human.
True.
People gotta get over it.
Yeah.
So
All
all
right.
right, good stuff.